Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Jason L. Jones with UATV. Today we're talking about the Maidan cases. On November 20th, the Prosecutor General's office transferred the Maidan cases to the State Bureau of Investigation, at which time a separate unit was created to investigate the cases. As of 2018, the Prosecutor General's office identified 441 suspects, and today Ukraine is still waiting for justice to be served. To provide us further insights on this, we are joined in the studio today by Maksym Kostetsky, a lawyer and legal expert. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, good to be here.
Likewise. So I was wondering, first off, I'd like to ask you a two-part question. First off, being that since November 20th, the prosecutor's office has been deprived of the functions of investigation. Like, why is that? Why were they deprived of these functions?
Well, frankly speaking, it has been almost 20 years since we wanted to create a separate pre-trial investigative body which allowed to separate the functions of the control over pre-trial investigations, which has the prosecutor's office, and actually conducting the pre-trial investigation, which has to be a separate independent, done by the separate independent body. And in 2016, we passed a law on State Bureau of Investigation, which was created in order to deal with the public officials' crimes, which means that any crimes that are done by the member of the parliament or a judge or a prosecutor or a minister or head of any governmental agency is subject to the pretrial investigation by this newly created body of State Bureau of Investigation. Now, it only started functioning last year in 2018, basically, but still some of the functions of the pretrial investigations have been transferred from the prosecutor's office to the bureau only this year, starting from November 20th.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. The next question, or the next part of the question is, so now with this change, all crimes committed against the activists of Revolution of Dignity should be handed over to the pretrial investigation agency. What kind of changes will it bring? And will the investigation speed up somehow by this?
We have around 114 cases that are related to the Revolution of Dignity events. 50 of them will be transferred to this, or are already transferred to the State Bureau of Investigations, which are subject to its jurisdiction. The problem was that there was a number of investigators who worked on this issue for a couple of years, beginning from 2015 or 2016, and they are not being transferred together with those cases to the newly created body, which means that new people that will take over the cases in the Bureau of Investigation will have to get themselves acknowledged and actually look over all the evidence that has been done by these years, which means that it may pause the existing investigations for quite some time, because the new people would need some time in order to make sure that they are actually acquainted with all the information, and it can be dealt actually in a proper way in order to ensure rule of law and in order to ensure that the people who are guilty of these crimes will be brought to justice. There is a new draft law, 2116, in the Parliament, which is focusing on some of the key issues regarding functionality of the State Bureau of Investigation, which has one of the amendments which will allow the investigators who previously worked on Maidan cases to be transferred to this newly created body in order to ensure the continuity of the investigation of these cases, which means that the people who already know everything about these cases will continue working on them, and we would not need to wait for another couple of years in order to ensure that these cases will be finished. And another issue regarding State Bureau of Investigation is the political affiliation of the existing head of this agency. Unfortunately, there has been a number of scandals that specify that the existing head of the State Bureau of Investigation, Mr. Roman Chuba, is affiliated with a couple of political parties in Ukraine, and particularly with the former deputy head of the presidential administration, Mr. Andriy Portnoy, which frankly speaking, has not supported the Revolution of Dignity and is not interested into this case in being done properly. And this is one of the biggest threats to the continuity of these cases and to the actual results which the society is waiting since 2014. And it is important for us to remember that without justice in these cases, the revolution will not be finished.
Of course. Okay. All right, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Also, would you say that the Maidan cases have been frozen for some time now? If so, why?
I think that there has been a lack of political will, unfortunately. The Prosecutor General's office, the former heads of the Prosecutor General office, did not necessarily try to fasten, try to somehow finish all of these cases, because I believe that there are some political interests involving some of the actors in these cases, and unfortunately that led to the fact that these cases have not been investigated properly during these years. However, there's been a separate unit that has been created in 2016 in the prosecutor's office that has been dealing with these cases, and there is a number of quite professional and honest investigators that have been working on these cases, and I believe that these people who already done a bunch of a bunch of enormous workload, need to finish their job, and they need to be allowed to do that in order to ensure that we are finally gonna see justice in these cases.
Okay. So, I mean, this is a hard process, right? It's a hard process. So, I guess my last question for you would be, what still needs to be done to speed up the investigations process?
Well, it is a big pity for me to say that it is already the 6th year after the Revolution of Dignity has happened, and we do not still see the result of all the 114 cases that are connected to the events of the Revolution of Dignity. I believe that, first of all, tomorrow the Parliament needs to vote on the draft law 2116 with the amendment already mentioned regarding the transfer of the investigators from the Prosecutor General's office to the State Bureau of Investigation. I think that everything that needs to be done by the political powers is to ensure true impartiality and independence of the investigative body in order to ensure that this work is going to be done properly and with everything regarding to compliance with the integrity and with the legislation of Ukraine, of course. And another thing is that continuation and the final result of these cases would not also only depend on the work on the State Bureau of Investigation, but it would also depend on the existing judicial system, which means that if we do not have independent courts which would hear these cases, would finally mean that we would not have result. Because one way or another it still goes to court, and the judge would be the final person in this issue to decide whether or not we're going to see justice in these cases and whether or not we're going to see the people who are guilty of the crimes during the Revolution of Dignity will be brought to justice.
Okay. Well, thank you, Maksym, for all your insights. It's really, it's a shame that it's taken so long, but
absolutely,
we can only hope and pray that it'll get resolved sooner, and that this new process and this new amendment will help move things along, in a positive way. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. So that was Maksym Kostetsky, lawyer, legal expert. Thank you for watching us, and stay tuned with UATV.